We got John in Canada. Pronouns are he, him, and seems to think we need God or something along those lines. So welcome, John. How can we help?
I want to make the case that we need God for our moral guidance.
Okay, go for it.
Well, you see, without God or any kind of religion, you see, with God, you have a standard of right or wrong, something objective to tell you what is right and wrong. But if you remove that, it's based on our feelings, individuals, and here's the result that we see: racism is abound. People are deciding what gender they are. People are being treated unfairly, and our freedoms are being slowly taken away by both the Biden administration and the Trudeau administration. We're in a state of chaos. Do you agree, gentlemen?
No, not in the slightest. So, so here's the thing: what makes you think that if there's a God, that gives an objective standard of right and wrong? Because isn't it just about what God says is right and wrong, and how isn't that would make it subjective? Because God's a thinking agent, in your view, right?
He is a thinking agent, but he knows more. He knows more than we do. That would be like you.
It doesn't. No. The fact that somebody knows more doesn't make something objective. It still means it's subjective. So your potential solution just takes it away from it being subjective with us as the foundation to subjective with somebody else as the foundation.
I hear that, but do you agree that it's falling apart?
Now, hang on. You also suggest that without God, we get racism. But which God are you talking about? Are you talking about the God of the Bible?
Yes, I'm talking about the Christian God.
The God of the Bible who had the Jews as his favorite people, and there were different rules for how you treated Jews than there were for how you treated other people? Isn't that racism?
Where exactly did that happen, sir?
Where exactly did that happen? In the Bible, in Exodus 21, when the rules for slavery come in, where you have a different set of rules for Hebrew slaves than you do for non-Hebrew slaves. And at every other point where God talks about how the Israelites are his chosen people, let my people go, how they are the preferred ones. And then Jesus later on comes talk about whether or not he is here to speak to the lost sheep of the house of Israel or to others. You don't seem to know the Bible if you don't think that God in the Bible favors the Hebrews. So how is that not racism?
Well, I'm not talking about the Bible, sir. The Bible is a reference one. I'm talking about what's happening right now, because right now what's happening.
No, sir. I asked you which God we were talking about, and you said it was the God of the Bible, didn't you?
Yes, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what's happening.
Okay, I know, but you're not talking about it as a matter of convenience so that you can ignore the difficulties in what you don't understand. So you say that without God, who, according to the God of the Bible, who's a racist, we end up with racism. Well, I would say that with humanism, where we consider the entirety of humanity as our foundational block that we're considering, that is a much better way to potentially end racism. Although I'm not saying you're going to wave a magic wand and racism is going to go away. But that to me would seem to be a better way to end racism than to have a God who prefers one group of people over another. Wouldn't you think?
Explain to me how that would be. Give me an example.
If you have a God who's in charge of morality, or a perspective of God that's in charge of morality, and it favors one ethnic group over another, contrast that with humanism as a foundation, which does not favor one ethnic group over another, isn't the latter less likely to result in racism?
I suppose so.
Okay. So the next thing you came up with was you're concerned about gender. What is the moral evaluation? And I don't want to use your language. You should probably call in the Transatlantic show at some point, or secular sexuality, to talk more about gender. But you seem to be very upset that people are allowed to, and I'll just go ahead and go with your language, identify as their gender. What's morally right or wrong about that?
First of all, you cannot change your gender. You are as you are. But what really bothers
no, hang on. I did not say anything about changing gender. Someone is a gender. They identify with a gender. But I asked what the moral consequence of that is.
Okay, Matt. If we allow people to go with what they identify as, it won't end there. Because what if someone says,
I'm sorry, but you are now going down a slippery slope. You are now going down a slippery slope. The second you said it won't end there, I asked about the moral evaluation of X, and you tried to tell me what X you think would lead to. I have zero interest in your thoughts on anything at this point because your thoughts are muddled and confused. You called in to talk about how the world would be going to hell in a handbasket without a God. And at every standpoint, at every facet of this, it shows that the God that you're proposing to solve this isn't a solution at all. And now when I ask what the problem is with gender, you say it leads to things, but that's not a problem with gender. That's a problem with what you think it leads to. So what is your case?
My case is that we start redefining our terms. If we start deciding for ourselves what is right and what is wrong, we're going to end up, we're not going to have anything to base our right and wrong on. It'll be whatever we want. It'll be free fall.
Well,
we know what murder will be okay, depending on what.
So again, you're going down the slippery slope, but you said that morals are objective. And so if we accept people as the gender they identify with, and among that community, when we do that as a society, when among that community suicides go down, whereas if we take your suggestion, which is we don't allow them to do that and we repress their gender identity and suicides go up, objectively, who has the better moral stance? Those of us who allow people to identify as they wish or people who don't, objectively, by the measurement of suicide, which measures effectively happiness and well-being.
So let me get this straight. Okay, Mr. Barrows, are you a man or a woman? Answer the question.
Irrelevant. Answer. No, you still have to answer my question first. So 1, irrelevant. 2, answer my question. Objectively, which viewpoint results in fewer suicides, and is fewer suicides something we should strive for in the population of humanity?
You know how many suicides have occurred because people who fought the word gender, they switched, and then now they regret it?
You're not answering the question. You're not answering the question.
I just,
All right, let me,
just did.
John.
I just did.
John, no, you didn't answer the question, John. You avoided the question by trying to deflect to something else. So I'm going to make this really easy, and I'm going to ask you a question. And based on the answer to this question is going to determine exactly how much time you get to spend on the remainder of this show or any other show. Let's assume for a second that your foundational premise that we need a God for a foundation of morality is true. I reject it, but we'll assume for the sake of argument that's true. Explain to all of us, as briefly as you can, how do we know what a God's position on morality is? How do you demonstrate? Because I've never heard from a God. I've never interacted with a God. I've never seen a God, anything a God's written. I've never heard anything a God said. I've heard lots of things that people claim God says, but I've never heard anything from a God. So how do you demonstrate clearly, unequivocally, what God's view on morality is? Go.
Oh, to put it quite simply, Mr. Dillahunty, I cannot.
Cool. Thanks. Goodbye.
Okay. Yeah, hold on. I was grinding teeth there while you were talking to him. And then when he started dodging my questions, it got worse. So let me, yeah, there we go. Okay. Much better. Objectively, which is better?
Got to an honest point where it's like the caller's entire point is we need God, but none of us have access to what God thinks. So I guess we're going to have to make do with the best we can. And if it turns out to not be as perfect as it would have been if there was a God here to actually answer questions, then that's God's fault and not ours.
Right.
This week.